How about traveling from Amsterdam to Berlin within 2.5 hours? Or to Prague in just 4? Europe is about connecting people, and high-speed rail is the best way to do this. It's fast, safe, and the most environmentally friendly long-distance transport option we have. And traveling by train is accessible. Anyone can use it. In countries like France, Spain and Italy, high-speed rail is already creating economic growth, jobs, opportunities, and freedom for all. These are the current high-speed rail connections in Europe. And these are the missing connections. We have the technology for 24 new connections. This is no fantasy. Many tracks are already available. Sounds good, right? Now we just need you to make yourself heard. Because if Europeans want to move, politicians have to act. Let's truly connect over 400 million Europeans, who then will be able to meet each other. Follow us on social media to stay up to date.
So this is a little bit to get us in the mood. For people that don't know me, my name is Dorien Rookmaker, and I'm an independent member of the European Parliament for the Netherlands. I have a background in finance and international relations, and I worked as a professional risk manager and CRO in banks and the railway sector. As an introduction for our event today, I would like to say that we all know that high-speed rail is a sustainable way of traveling, and it fits perfectly in the Green Deal. The EU is talking about shifting to rail, and it's talking about it for years now. But too little has actually been done. I strongly believe politicians need a push when it comes to projects that are big and costly and risky. Although there are a few good examples in the past, like the Eurotunnel, we still have a long way to go. The European politicians and bureaucrats are trying to make a better Europe, and they're doing the best they can. But they're investing in rules and regulations. Investing in infrastructure is new territory for the EU, and not a shared competence, although it officially is. We don't make business cases in Europe for new legislation, but we do need them to make our point about the benefits of high-speed rail, and that's a little bit odd, I think. Although new rules and regulations are costly, because of the need of more inspectors, more judges, and an expansion to the court system, we tend to forget to make a real objective assessment of the effectiveness of them. As of day one in the Parliament, I'm a big promoter of high-speed rail, to improve the lives of everyone in Europe. But I soon found out the lack of information was a hurdle for politicians and to get my point across. To make a plan with a planning, I took on an engineer and an economist, and they are here today. Together we did field and desk research, and the research you can find in the fact sheets that is distributed today. In November 2021, I presented in a webinar my plan to link the capitals of Europe via a well-connected high-speed rail network. With my team, I assessed the missing links and I made cost analysis. I went to all major players in the sector and I let them challenge my plan. And during our trip in trains in Europe, we found out high-speed rail has secret benefits everybody should know about. In 2023, we will organize more webinars about high-speed rail to get our message across. High-speed rail is the safest way of traveling, not only because of low casualty rates, but also because it provides a sense of safety from start to finish. No anxieties, no stress. People prefer trains above planes and cars. Moreover, high-speed rail is a proven economy booster, and it creates jobs and economic growth. And this is our topic of today. It allows people to pursue all the opportunities that are open to them in the EU, and people will have more options when choosing jobs and will be able to visit friends and family. It is the most sociable way of traveling. Public transport is the biggest and greatest equalizer because it is accessible to all, no matter your age, your ability, or your state of mind. Everybody can get on a train. High-speed rail leaves nobody behind. The EU is about peace, liberty, prosperity, and safety, and all these objectives will be getting closer if we start building the missing links to create a better future. This goes especially for the people with reduced mobility. They have a right guaranteed by the UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The right of freedom of movement in the EU goes especially for them. Last but not least, with a high-speed rail network in Europe that connects all capital cities, the EU will live up to its promise. It can contribute to mutual understanding and peace on our continent, because if people meet each other, mutual understanding will grow. Now, I would like to introduce the speakers of today. Mr. Borghini on my right side will talk about high-speed rail in Europe. Dr. Pagliara, if I pronounce it correctly, perfect, will talk about the socio-economic benefits of high-speed rail. And Mr. Vergouwen, at the end, he will shine a light on the case for high-speed rail connections between Berlin and Amsterdam. So I give the floor to Marcus Borghini. And let me introduce Marcus before he starts. Mr. Carlo Borghini is responsible for the overall management of Europe's rail, successor of the Shift to Rail joint undertaking. Activities since he took up the position of Executive Director in February 2016. In 2021, his mandate has been extended up to May 2026. Prior to his postings, Mr. Borghini held senior management positions in different domains in private and international organizations at a corporate level. Mr. Borghini holds a master's degree equivalent in business economics and speaks Italian, French, and English. But if you don't speak these languages, we have interpretation. So I give the floor to Mr. Borghini.
Thank you, Mr. Rookmaker, for your words and introduction. Effectively, when I saw your CV, I think we share a large part of our experience in working in banks and risk management and these type of things. I will present, and as you can see, a study, and I have the authorization of the contractor who prepared it, about the smart and affordable rail service in Europe, and it's fundamentally a socio-economic study. So it shows what I think everyone expects, the benefits of introducing a European high-speed rail network. So not anymore the islands we discussed before, we saw in Italy, in France, in Spain, as the others they are developing, but connecting, as was said before, the capital of Europe and all the cities with more than 250,000 inhabitants. It's a major element of the European integration. As its major elements has been said about peace, prosperity, safety and liberty. So, perfect. The study objective was to estimate, as I said, the socio-economic impact. And this was done looking at the high-speed rail demand and forecast, looking at economic benefits, so estimated the economic impact that has been explored in other countries about the introduction of high-speed rail, and finally the societal benefit. They are all going together. And when we talk about high-speed rail, I think the major question is not simply speed, it's time, is the value of time that we have for each of us. And the second key point, the high-speed rail network should also build up on an existing and future connectivity at the regional level. We need to bring the European communities together. And this is the objective. So we bring together communities that can commute to major hub of mobility and transportation, if we want to call them station, but they are not station, they are much more. And from there on, go on high-speed network to connect with intercontinental flights, to move other continents, to move in capitals, to connect in different cities. The competitiveness of the high-speed rail has been estimated on the importance of connectivities on the long distancing, the economic growth that is being created by the development of high-speed in many countries, the enormous reduction of CO2 and carbon footprint in terms of sustainability that comes from using rail from other modes of transport. Many other modes of transport today are decarbonizing their way. We need to work on performance. We need to increase the performance. And when I talk about performance, I'm talking about services that are provided to the passenger, high-speed rail, but also to the logistic value chain. And finally, the time, as I said before, is one of the key elements here. How we did the study was to work on the idea that we started to look at baseline coming from the 10T maps that have been endorsed by a general position of the Council on 5th of December. I will make a small comments because those that know very well the rail network will detect that not all the lines identified there are high-speed 9, so bear with me. So only to be absolutely clear about these type of things, as I'm Italian, as you can understand from my accent, there is one line that is depicted there is absolutely not an high-speed line, but the objective is also what happens in the future. After we have designed, sorry, a 2030 scenario that is looking at what is already planned as investment, what you can expect seeing in the future. And after the most ambitious scenario, the most ambitious scenario is we connect the capital of Europe. The integration, European integration of connecting the capital of Europe goes beyond any type of value. And if you look at this scenario and the extension towards the acceding country, not the last three, as you can imagine, Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, can you imagine the connectivity that we can create with this country? If you have a high-speed line connecting Kiev with Poland, Austria, Romania, that's the integration of Europe. This is what we discussed before. In terms of market assessment, the study has been designed together to assess different type of shocks. And the major importance of this study is that this study has been done by the contractor together with the Bocconi University and another organization, but has been a joint study done funded by Europe's Rail together with the CR, the All-Rail and UNIFE. And not only because it's been done together, but because this association contributed enormously with their expertise and know-how to run the study. And I think we are extremely grateful for their commitment. Clearly, when you look at the approach and you look at the demand shock, you look at the development of the high-speed rail infrastructure on two aspects. One is infrastructure, you already mentioned it. The other is the work I'm responsible for is research innovation. ATO, digitalization of the rail system, new services coming from these services. And after we have looked at the impact of the evolution of the aviation system, so short-haul flights and I would say aviation fuel taxes, but not because we want to tax, but because it's a fair competition. The car aspects, the automotive industry aspects, how is evolving car sharing, prices of fuel, and which will be the evolution of decarbonization, and similarly for the buses. Always in the methodology approach, we assess the economic impact. So we made the study made an assessment of the value in terms of net present value, so the clear economic benefits, the benefit in terms of ratio, cost-benefit ratio, and finally the emission. And now we go to the map. As I said before already, the first map is require a bit of attention because there are some lines. I don't know if he's moving, but I don't see moving. Maybe you can, thank you. Some lines that, as I said before, as we refer to a specific map that has been endorsed by the general position of the Council, are including also some other elements. After we have the future high-speed rail network scenario that is developing. We have the scenario at the 2050 that is coming. You can see the color changes, connecting all the capital of Europe and the extended core and comprehensive network of the TEN-T. And finally, the most ambitious that I already mentioned is to integrate the acceding country to the European Union, as you can see with the dotted lines. You can draw as many lines as you want at the end, and clearly this will depend on a demand. This is a study, so it's based on some assumptions. In terms of evolution of the high-speed rail, you can see that if you take the baseline scenario, so if we continue not to invest in high-speed rail, we will not be able to change substantially the growth of high-speed rail. This will be quite a steady line. But if you go towards the scenario 2050, you can see how all this is evolving and which can be the impact in transportation. And the next slide shows effectively the evolution in terms of the market share of high-speed rail from the base scenario to the scenario 2030. Thank you. Sorry, this one? It's 2030. Yeah, perfect, thank you. This one, you can see how the yellow lines are increasing and how evolving the market share. And you can see already the net present value, as well as the value in reduction of carbon footprint in terms of billion of tons of CO2 emissions, but also the job creation and that is available. And finally, we have a scenario that is the 2050 scenario. That shows that if we invest and we go to the full integration of the European rail network and push the network beyond the current border of the Union and looking at the acceding country, the three last one, but also the Western Balkan, and maybe other areas that will come later on, the opportunity are enormous. Here you can see this net present value at economic level is 836 billion euros, net present value calculated at a 2070 scenario, okay? And when you compare the cost of, also the highest cost of developing high speed, this net present value would go down to 500 plus billion euros. So although using the highest cost that we have experienced in building high speed, still we have a major economic benefit coming from this, without talking about the jobs, talking about integration and the other areas. To conclude, fundamentally this study confirmed that the high speed can become the dominant mode of transport, answering services and need in the future if we continue to invest. And we have expected results. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borghini, for this high-speed presentation. We're going swiftly to the next speaker. She is Francesca Pagliara, doctor and professor in transportation and engineering at the University of Naples. Dr. Francesca Pagliara has significant research experience in reputable institutions in UK, Switzerland, and France. And during her career, she was and has been visiting professor in several European and non-European cities. Am I correct? Yes. She's author of academic books and of more than 100 papers published in journals. She participated at several research projects. Her main fields of research are the wider socio-economic impacts of high-speed rail systems, among other topics. Since 2021, she's chair of the International Workshop on High-Speed Rail Socio-Economic Impacts, supported by the UIC, Alliances of Universities for High-Speed Rail. Mrs. Pagliani,
thank you so much. Thank you so much for this introduction, and good afternoon to everybody that are in person and the ones that are connecting at home. Indeed, it is since 2008 that I've been working on analysis and quantification of the socioeconomic impacts of high-speed rail systems. And since then, I've come across into several case studies around the world. And this afternoon, I'm going to show you a kind of summary of the best practices on the proven socioeconomic effects of high-speed rail systems. Indeed, everything started in 1964 with the Shinkansen in Japan connecting Tokyo with Osaka. The life of Japanese has been changing since then, and I can see that the life of everybody, the way we work and we live, has been changing. The motivations why many countries are now investing in high-speed systems, it is not only because they are friends of the environment or because they increase the transport infrastructure capacity, but mainly because they can foster economic and regional growth. And to be honest, I'm going to focus on this aspect this afternoon. Indeed, high-speed systems have the power of shrinking space and shaping places. I call these places megalopolis. What is a megalopolis? A megalopolis is an integrated economic urban complex which is created by a fusion of multiple cities connected by high-speed transport, high-speed trains in this case. They are geographical areas that share a common labor market and a common market for households and business services. What I could observe in the recent years about, two cities served by high-speed rail is that I could observe an increase of generated induced demand, which means that there are passengers, travelers that were not traveling before on this corridor and have started traveling on this corridor because of the presence of high-speed rail. And I could observe an increase of commuters. I could observe an increase of tourists. I could observe also an increase of business trips. So people that were not traveling before, but because of the high-speed trains, they've started doing that. Let's consider, for example, I'm Napolitan, I'm from Napoli. When it was introduced, the Napoli-Roma high-speed rail link, since 2005, the life of the Neapolitans has changed because people live in Napoli and work in Roma and go back to their families in the afternoon. It's just 1 hour by high-speed train. That made the difference. I was saying that the Japanese case study was really prototypal. Yes, indeed, it is. With its 2,700 kilometers of lines, with an annual ridership of 99,000 million passengers per kilometer, 92 stations with an average delay per trip less than 1 minute. But, Tokyo-Osaka, since 1964, today is just 2 hours and 23 minutes. It was immediately after the inauguration in 1964, 3 hours and 10, and before it was 6 hours and 30 minutes. But what's more, Shinkansen in Japan has brought, an increase in labor productivity. If you look at these images, since 1981, which is the first figure on the top on the left, till the last one in 2006, you can observe with increasing deployment of the network, there has been an increase of labor productivity with the red color. You see it around Tokyo. So high-speed rail brought an increase in labor productivity in a country where, of course, Shinkansen was, the first high-speed rail line in Japan. But I could observe the same case studies behavior in China, for example. High-speed rail brought an increase in employment, or in the Netherlands, as we will see in a minute. The increased accessibility brought an increase of firms location around the high-speed rail stations, or in Spain with Alta Velocidad Española, we could observe an increase in the GDP, a growth of the GDP for the whole country. But I will focus also on 3 other important aspects. Can high-speed rail system foster the choice of a tourist destination by tourists, or can high-speed rail system foster the location of temporary offices? And how about the property market? Can high-speed rail boost property prices? Together with a colleague from the University of Greenwich, I developed the 13 A's model, which defines the 13 A's attributes defining the success of a tourist destination. And among them, there is, of course, accessibility. Access to a given destination is fundamental. The tourist market cannot be conceived without the transportation system, without its infrastructure and services allowing tourists to reach a given destination, or for moving within the destination itself. So the two markets go parallelly. And so I started investigating whether high-speed rail system can have an impact on the choice of tourists. And I came across into this article. It was 2012, so 11 years ago. It is the Shenzhen Daily, it's a Chinese newspaper. And I came across into this article. Passengers with high-speed train tickets from Shenzhen or Guangzhou to Wuhan can enjoy discounts of 30-40% when visiting major tourism attractions in central China's Yubin province. It was April. So I myself wanted to investigate, if there were other case studies in the country, all around the world. And I came across into case studies in Spain, in China, or in other countries, and we could observe an increase in tourists due to the presence of the high-speed rail. For example, 12% in tourism revenue, an inbound tourist in China, 12% higher of domestic tourists, of foreign tourists with respect to the domestic ones. And of course, I myself, this is Italy. The high-speed rail network in Italy is a reality since 1992 with the Direttissima Roma-Firenze. And since 2009, we have these lines connecting the big cities, the big metropolitan areas of Italy. And now we have 10 cities served by high-speed rail with 13 high-speed rail stations. So what I did, I wanted to investigate whether high-speed rail could have an impact on the choice of tourists visiting Italy. On the top, you can see the images of the domestic tourists. Below, you can see the images of the foreign tourists. And with the blue color, with increasing deployment of the network since 2007, and you can see on the left side the image in 2016, you can observe with the blue color the increasing impact on the tourists of the, of high-speed rail. Stations. High-speed rail stations, no more considered as just nodes in a network, but beautiful places. Pieces of artwork designed by famous stars of contemporary architecture. Look at this amazing, they are pieces of artwork. Reggio Emilia by Santiago Calatrava, I love him. Liège-Guillemins in Belgium, Santiago Calatrava. Or look at this one. Look at the one of Norman Foster in Saudi Arabia, or the one of Zaha Hadid in Afragola high-speed rail station. But, high-speed rail stations can also be considered really places where to place temporary offices. What are temporary offices? Temporary offices are conceived for mobile workers. Mobile workers are those who do not own head offices and are pushed to travel in order to have the meetings. So these temporary offices can be rented for short time periods. And Regius, which is the world leader provider of temporary offices all over the world, had the strategic idea to place these temporary offices inside the terminals, high-speed rail stations, airports, motorway stations, shopping mall. The way we work in Italy has completely changed. 2/3 of the Italians work from remote at least once per week. This is also the result of the pandemic. Italian office on demand requests in 2022 has increased by plus 71% with respect to 2021. And Italian meeting room requests in 2022 has increased by plus 471 with respect to the previous year. So, Italy since 1997 has 85 Regius centers. Where are these centers? Conceived for mobile workers around high-speed rail stations, inside high-speed rail stations. Look, for example, the case study of the Garibaldi high-speed rail station in Napoli, the city where I live and work. On the 6th and on 12th floor of the building of the high-speed rail station, you can see these temporary offices, which are fully equipped with Wi-Fi, secretary, video conferences, and so on. So I was very curious to understand who were the clients. 37% of the clients rented these offices because they were inside the high-speed rail station. They arrive, have the meeting and go back. This is a new way of thinking, also working. And temporary offices were also rented by local workers. This is amazing. So by the Neapolitans. And since 2013, it is interesting to report these figures. The increase of mobile workers has been plus 45% for this high-speed rail station and plus 55% for, the local workers. And for some case studies like Milan Central high-speed rail stations, the mobile workers have been increasing by plus 70. Going to the conclusions. High-speed rail system can boost property prices? The answer is yes. Case studies in China, Japan, UK, And also, you know, case studies in Italy, I could observe that around the high-speed stations, there has been an increase in property prices since the inauguration of the, you know, stations themselves. To conclude, high-speed station has an impact on labor productivity, we have seen, on tourism, on job opportunity, on property prices. So the question is, are the benefits of high-speed system less secret now? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Francesca, for this impactful presentation. Let's go to our last speaker. Rogier Vergouwen. Rogier Vergouwen is chairman of the High Speed Rail Netherlands Foundation, an organization aimed to expand high-speed rail connections between the Netherlands and abroad. He published several articles about the economic and sustainable benefits of high-speed rail, amongst others in the NRC. He's also owner of Rogier Management Advisory, am I correct? Right. A commercial management firm based in Amsterdam. Mr. Vergouwen, you take the floor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rookmaker. I'm going to, you just heard a great story about the European perspective, then on the socio-economic benefits that applies to all. And I'm going to have a look what benefits there are if we would expand the high-speed rail system from the Netherlands. So that's more into the detail. Let's have a look. We first take a step back. So when Carlo was talking about time is of the essence, it's exactly this. Look at this man. He is looking at his watch. He needs to travel from A to B, and he's in a hurry. He doesn't want to lose too much time, and he's going to choose the shortest mean of transportation, and then he makes a choice based on time first. So if you look at that time is the most important factor. There has been international research about this. And if the travel time from A to B, so let's say from Amsterdam to Berlin, would be 2 hours, then you completely dominate the market with high-speed rail. The train dominates the market. If you do it a little bit longer and say, okay, we do it 3 to 4 hours, then it would be about a little bit more than 50%. Let's say 50-50 between the train and the plane. If it takes 5 to 6 hours, it's the plane that's, of course, dominating because the plane is way faster than this 5 to 6 hours. So let's have a look at an example, how that works. So here we see a travel time, and we start on the left. You see Amsterdam-Berlin. So as a current situation, it's a distance of 650 kilometers. And if you look at it, then the plane, which takes only a little bit more than 4 hours for the total travel, so that includes from going to the airport and also from the airport to your office or business destination, it's calculated at about 4 hours. The train, as you see, it's more than 6 hours. So we'll all understand if you need to go for a business trip and back, no one is going to take the train for a day. Everyone is going to take the plane. Let's look to the right. Madrid-Barcelona, it's the same distance. And the time for the train used to be the same. It used to be also 6.5 hours. But what the Spanish did about 20 years ago, they started to replace it by a high-speed rail. And you see the time dropping. The train itself takes 2.5 hours from station to station. But if you take the travel from station to house and to the office, you are on average 3 hours and 15 minutes. And as you see in that line, it's the fastest way of traveling. And that's exactly why the high-speed rail has taken over the planes on that traject. So if we have this in the background, we know now that the time is of the essence. So let's have a look. Yes. So if we look now at the benefits, and we have this knowledge, then we know that traveling at a distance about 2 to 800 kilometers, the high-speed rail is going to be the fastest way to travel. That means if you have a business and your people spend less time on travel, you have more time to be productive in other ways. So that means you increase your competitiveness. And for a city, so here you see the city of Amsterdam, if you are connected on a high-speed rail, you are a very interesting location for international businesses to start an office. So that's going to create economic growth for the city. The second, it's a little bit related. We see here Amsterdam, and Amsterdam is luckily connected on the high-speed rail from Paris. So it goes from Paris and then it stops at the end. It's the end station in Amsterdam. But from there are no more connections. So there's no hub function. If you would connect Amsterdam with Hamburg, with Berlin, with Frankfurt, you are going to create an economic hub. And that's going to be beneficial for the city as well in an economic perspective. Then if we go to the third slide, there's one more benefit of a high-speed rail. With a high-speed rail, as soon as you have the track, you can have a non-stop train from Amsterdam to Berlin, but you can also say, okay, 10 minutes later, I let another train, a high-speed rail train, go over that track. And it does make a stop every 200 kilometers. So for instance, in Enschede, it could stop, and in Hanover. And then those cities will create wealth as well. So they will create their own economic boost. And that means that in the end, you don't put all the wealth of the country in a city like Amsterdam or Berlin, but you spread it more over the country. And that's good for all of us. The fourth benefit is Schiphol. Oh, it goes a little bit fast. Could you do it one slide back? Thank you. Schiphol. Schiphol is the economic engine of the Amsterdam metropolitan area. It's very important and we need to keep it. But we also see that's on the limit of its growth. So if you cannot expand anymore, you need to look how you can still grow your flights. And you can do that if you substitute your short-haul flights to the high-speed rail. So if everyone who is going to fly to Berlin is going to take the train instead, that means you get slots free. And that means also, you can also say, look, I don't want to have more flights. You can also keep some to preserve the nature. So there are benefits on that as well. Then if we look at the infrastructure, yes, here we go. Sorry. Yes, the infrastructure. Look at the population. In the Netherlands, we have currently 17.5 million people. And that's within about 10 years is going to be 20 million people. So if you have more people, all those people need to travel. And if you look on top of that, Asia is growing in prosperity. All those people want to travel as well. And they are going to visit Europe. So you need to adapt your infrastructure to that situation. And if you add a high-speed rail infrastructure to that, you will get less congested roads. Schiphol can still work perfectly. And the traditional trains, they are completely packed. They can keep going as they are, and they get a little bit of relief as well. So then if we go to the next slide, we see the sustainability. Sustainability, as Carlo explained, is one of the major points of high-speed rail. If you look at the distance for 200 to 800 kilometers, you see these means of transportation. This is a choice that we all have if we would cover such a distance. The plane has an emission of 156 grams per passenger per kilometer, while a high-speed rail only has 6. It's information from the British government. They did an extensive research several years ago where they took all the emissions into account. So not just the carbon dioxide, but also other emissions like nitrogen and other things. Then if we go to the next slide, we can see the convenience. Now everyone has been in a train, and I think everyone recognizes this interior if you have been in a high-speed rail. That's way more comfortable traveling than if you need to take the plane. If you need to sit in a small chair, if you cannot really walk, and where you need to go through the passport control, through the luggage control, it's all easy. So it's the most convenient way of traveling anyway. And if we go to the next slide, I think this is a really important one. We are in Europe, and for sure you all saw these flags today. I was talking with someone living in China about the Chinese rollout of the high-speed rail and all the economic benefits that it gave. And after the conversation, he told me, he said, you know what actually is an even major benefit is that uniting the people in this country. because it's so easy to travel from one destination to the other one. And I think that's what we would like to achieve in Europe as well, making traveling easier and uniting the European people together. If we go to the next slide, yeah. So those were the benefits. Now let's have a look at the opportunities. There are 3 opportunities, and one is right here. It's Amsterdam. You see that on the left of the map, and you see in the northeast, you see Copenhagen. It's a distance about 750 kilometers. So with a high-speed rail, you should be covering in it maximum 3.5 hours. And that's still within, where people prefer the high-speed rail. The Black Line is currently being built. You see there, under the sea, the Fehmarnbelt, they are building a tunnel to have a high-speed rail and the shortest possible route to Hamburg. So you see that the Black Line, that's finished in 2029. The Netherlands is going to expand a new rail to Groningen. And now they are thinking to not make that a high-speed rail. So then, in the end, it's going to take 5 hours. We all know the answer. No one is going to substitute a plane for the high-speed rail. So the opportunity is here to make that, if you are making new railroads anyway, to make that high-speed rail. If we go to the next slide. I'm going to the end, yeah. It's the same situation to Berlin. From Hanover, which is in the middle, to Berlin, there is higher speed rail available. So the only thing we need to connect is a line from Amsterdam to Enschede. To Hanover with a possible intermediate stop in Enschede. And then the last slide. And here we see Frankfurt. We all know Frankfurt is a major business hub. And for sure, you all have been often in the plane to Frankfurt. Well, you think I could have done this by train. You could currently take the train. It takes 4 hours. So that's exactly why you all took the plane. But you could do the distance in 2 hours because the line Paris to Lyon or Paris to Strasbourg, it's less than 2 hours for a similar distance. Thank you. You can, we have a website if you have more information. And you can follow us at LinkedIn. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dorien.
Thank you, Rogier. So we have had 3 high-speed presentations about high-speed rail. One about the benefits for Europe, one the benefits for a country and a region and for tourism, and one for the benefits of passengers and the Netherlands. And I can imagine that there are some questions in the audience. So who would like to pose a question? Can you say who you are, please, and then pose the question? Yes.
Of course. Good afternoon. So my name is Amit, and I work with Siemens Mobility. So we also primarily work with trains. And my question is, I saw a lot of stats about how high-speed rails can replace short-haul flights. But given the competitive pricing and the budget aircrafts and airlines, do you still think it can replace the short-haul flights? Because, especially for the connections that you mentioned, for example, say Brussels to Berlin or Amsterdam to Berlin, the flights are barely 10 or 20 euros. I don't think the high-speed rail network can ever reach that pricing. So that's my question.
Rogier, would you answer that question?
If the microphone is working. Yes, thank you very much for your question. You are right. Pricing is another aspect, but in the end, time is of the essence. People look first, if you're on a business trip, you're first going to look how you can do that trip in a day. And if you save 50 euros, but you need to take a hotel as well, then it's not going to be a saving, let alone the productivity that you are losing. So I think that's one thing. But there's more. If you look at it, there are countries where they have a great high-speed rail. And I'm here on the table with 2 people from Italy. I was lately in a train from Naples to Rome. It's retour, and it was 39 euro for a retour first class. So that was from center Naples to Santos, Rome, and back. If you look at that price, and if you look that if I would have taken an airplane, which is for time reasons stupidity, because all the time going to the airport, taking the flight, the security, etc., it would cost me at least 4 hours. But if you look that I would also have additional costs on top of that to take a taxi to the airport, etc., then I think if you take the whole business case, the train is the better way.
Thank you, Rogier.
Thank you.
Yes, Francesca, you would like to add something.
Thank you. I would like to add one thing. For example, what has happened to me to come to here. There is not a direct flight from Napoli to Brussels, which is amazing. So I needed to change in Rome. Can you imagine? So 2 flights for a really short distance. High-speed stations are in the city center, as my colleague has already said, and I'm not going to cite the air companies that have taken to come here, but I've received several disturbing emails from the company saying that my departure time has changed. Another email, the vehicle has changed. You know, the passenger, when traveling, would like to feel safe. I mean, these disturbing emails are really disturbing, you know.
Mr. Borghini?
Thank you. I think you come from Siemens Mobility, and I think you brought up something important. All the elements have been mentioned are fine, but if we go for an high-speed rail network at European level, we should not underestimate the volume that we'll create in terms also for a company like Siemens Mobility to develop vehicle. So on one side, we are working in Europe's rail at the European Union level with a program that has the objective to reduce the costs, life cycle cost of the rail system all in all. That's one of the key elements. Second, I think at the moment in which you start to have mass production, not only a tailor-made vehicle, the cost of the train will go. So all the system will reduce its cost and will become more competitive without speaking about volumes. So I would say, yes, most probably the entry point will be more difficult, but I think it's the competition in most of the market. When you are an entrant, you have to pay the cost and suffer from it. There are no doubts. But if you see the experience where you have high speed, I think nobody today will think to take an aircraft to go from Brussels to Paris. But today we have still aircraft going from Brussels to Amsterdam to Paris. And it can be offered. And if you think about it, it's pure nonsense. Thank you.
I would like to add that as a member of European Parliament, I'm aware of all the extra taxation plans for aviation. So I think the difference between costs for an airplane ticket or a train ticket will subside in time, and probably the train will be cheaper in all cases. Now it's only in some cases.
Well,
can you state your name, please? And
yes, my name is Vergouwen. I traveled actually today from Amsterdam. I heard there are many benefits of high-speed rail, and also best practices across the world. And considering that we have the current infrastructure in EU can support, what are the obstacles that's not being implemented yet?
I think this is a good question for Mr. Borghini.
Thank you. But clearly, one of the key elements is the infrastructure. We don't have, in reality, always the infrastructure. The infrastructure is existing in some area, in other areas to be upgraded or be built. And clearly, priority, if you look at the investment done in some Eastern European area, and you look at the status of rail before the enlargement and after the enlargement, you will see where the investment went. They didn't go to rail, to be clear. And that's something that we need to recover. I think now it's clear that if you want to have the opportunity to travel, and if you think how much each of us contribute to the carbon footprint, we can change it completely if we start to believe in rail and high-speed rail. And I think this is what is the moment that we change the situation. The second point I would say is that I would like, from a European perspective, looking also at the question of that if you continue to create islands in the member states that are absolutely effective in some countries, they don't create benefit for all Europe. That's the importance, as also Dorien mentioned before, of creating a European network of high speed. because you connect community. Most of the people take the weekend plane to go to a weekend somewhere in a capital, okay? The carbon footprint of this is enormous. What about if we have the connectivity by rail? I think that's the change. So there is a question of a major alignment of investments to be done at European level on where we want to have the high-speed rail network working on. And finally, clearly, we come from moment in which rail, to be honest, didn't serve properly always its clients. So the change is coming. I'm responsible for a program in which we invest 1.2 billion euros in research innovation. I can assure you all our members are fully committed to deliver the change because it's their future. They look at it as a major opportunity for the change.
Thank you. That's great news, Carlo. We have still time for one more question. Is there somebody who wants to do the final? Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Elisa from SNCF, the French railway company. I have a question. Did you have a look, because you're talking about the benefits of high-speed rails in every country as if it was kind of homogeneous. My question is, did you look at the different extent of these benefits, depending notably on the degree of completion of the network? For instance, in a country with a developed high-speed rail network, for instance, maybe the benefits of having an extra high-speed rail line will be maybe, in fact, inferior to the cost of having this new line, while if you have a country like in the Eastern Europe part, for instance, where they have almost no high-speed rail connection, then if you have a new line, probably the benefits would be higher. So did you have different kind of quantification of the benefits? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. Of course, I came across into several case studies. We are now starting a study with respect to countries where, high-speed rail is not yet a reality. And, for example, analyzing the future impacts, forecasting effects of high-speed rail is something that it is always a must before, implementing these systems. And to be honest, you are right. I mean, that will bring, an increase in employment, an increase in labor productivity. The increase of accessibility will definitely, will bring a change. But I will like to focus also on the case study of Italy, for example. You know that the high-speed rail network connects, serves, the country till the city of Salerno, just close to Naples in the south. And now they are building, the new high-speed rail link connecting Napoli with Bari, which is in region Puglia. So the network is increasing, the deployment of the network is increasing, and that will make a change because the rest of the country will be connected by high-speed rail. And a study that we have made, supports the fact that it will bring, more, how can I say, employees, productivity for the entire country. So for two different case studies, one of that where the high-speed rail will be completed, and others where it is a work in progress. For example, case studies in India. We will see that there will be definitely benefits when implementing this network.
So this is the end of our event for today, but it is not the end of our journey because we're trying to get the building of the network, the high-speed rail network, actually on the agenda of the European Commission, and we will give it attention the rest of the year. So we will organize other seminars and webinars to get our message across, and we hope you will join us next time. So thank you for your coming here. Thank you for logging in and be a member of a participant of this event, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you.
How about traveling from Amsterdam to Berlin within 2.5 hours, or to Prague in just 4. Europe is about connecting people, and high-speed rail is the best way to do this. It's fast, safe, and the most environmentally friendly long-distance transport option we have. And traveling by train is accessible. Anyone can use it. In countries like France, Spain and Italy, high-speed rail is already creating economic growth, jobs, opportunities, and freedom for all. These are the current high-speed rail connections in Europe. And these are the missing connections. We have the technology for 24 new connections. This is no fantasy. Many tracks are already available. Sounds good, right? Now we just need you to make yourself heard. Because if Europeans want to move, politicians have to act. Let's truly connect over 400 million Europeans, who then will be able to meet each other. Follow us on social media to stay up to date.